We're going to do a little jump in the book of Daniel. We've been going kind of chapter by chapter, and we got through chapter 4, and the next chapter obviously is chapter 5. We're going to skip chapters 5 and 6, as interesting as they are, because they're a little bit out of order, as we're going to see. Chapter 5 happens towards the end of a particular king's reign, and chapter 6 does as well. It happens after that. Whereas chapter 7 and 8 happened during that king's reign, so it's important to see that. So it's a little bit out of order. As soon as I say it's out of order chronologically, the obvious question that you ask is, why is it out of order chronologically? Why didn't they just put it in chronological order? And there are reasons for that. Mainly it's the place of the style of what it is fits better in the second half of the book. The second half of the book is primarily Daniel's visions, and the first half of the book is primarily stories that happen. So this is more of Daniel's vision, but chronologically it's out of order. And in order to make some of the points that we're going to make, or that we'd like to make when we get to chapters 5 and 6, so this has to come first. So if I lost you on that, which was pretty confusing, don't worry. Basically, the key point is that it's chronological. That we're going to follow the chronological order, which means we're not going to follow the sequence that the book presented to us. So I'm skipping to chapter 7 in the book of Daniel, which is fine because it's chronological. So up until now, we've seen that Daniel is a key member of the court of the king Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is a very famous king. We know him from other places in the Tanakh. He accomplishes important and significant things. He's ruthless. He's powerful. He's a real guy. We know him. If you look at the ancient, archaeology and things that exist from the time of Nebuchadnezzar, he's there. You can go to museums and you can touch his stuff and see his impact on the world. He's a very, very significant king in the Tanakh, and even outside the Tanakh. So that's very, very important. And Daniel plays a key role in his court, as we've seen through the numerous different stories and visions that come into play. Nebuchadnezzar, in the last chapter that we read, chapter 4, goes through this rough experience where he sees a vision that says, you're going to not be the king forever, and you're even going to go through this awful experience where you basically become an animal and live like an animal for a while. And we see that it comes true. And that kind of, after that, Nebuchadnezzar says, and I recognize Hashem and his power and how important he is. And that's kind of where we left off at the end of chapter 4. After Nebuchadnezzar comes his son. And that's who we're going to begin with today. His son, his name is Belshazzar, which is not to be confused with the Babylonian name that was given to Daniel. His name was Belteshazzar. There's a tet in there. So they have very similar names. And his name is not the same name. The son's name is not the same name as Daniel, but it's similar. So here we go. In the first year, I'm reading chapter 7. If you have it, you can read along with me. I'm going to read the English, but I remember it's written in Babylon. It's written in Aramaic. So, if our Hebrew skills are not good enough, certainly Aramaic is not. In the first year, this is chapter 7, Pasuk 1. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and a vision of his mind in bed. Afterward, he wrote down the dream. Beginning the account, Daniel related the following. In my vision at night, I saw the 4 winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. 4 mighty beasts, different from each other, emerged from the sea. So Daniel is having a dream at night, and he writes it down, and here we have the recording of what he saw. 4 mighty beasts, different from each other, emerged from the sea. So 4 animals, which we've seen already, that theme of 4 has occurred a couple of times already in the book of Daniel. It was like a lion, but had eagles. The first was like a lion, but had eagle's wings. As I looked on, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted off the ground and set on its feet like a man, and given the mind of a man. So again, he sees four animals. They're all going to be kind of animals. They're not exactly animals. The first animal is a lion, but this lion isn't a regular lion. It's a lion with eagle's wings. And the eagle, or some other version, some bird type wing. And the wings were plucked off, not sure how or by who. And it's lifted off the ground, is this beast, and set upon the feet like a person, which sounds like it's on 2 feet. And it's given the mind of a man. Okay, so the animal, this lion with eagle's wings, loses its eagle's wings, starts walking on 2 feet, upright like a human, and then has the mind of a human. Okay, that's animal number 1. Then I saw a second animal, different beast, which was like a bear, but raised on one side and with 3 fangs in its mouth among its teeth. It was told, arise, eat much. So this second animal is not a lion, it's a bear, right? Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So here is bears, right? So a lion is a certain type of creature, a bear is another type of creature. Now this bear is different in that it's raised on one side with 3 fangs in its mouth. So it has 3 particularly sharp teeth, and it's told to eat. Okay. After that, as I looked on, there was another one. So now he sees another one, like a leopard. So kind of like lions and tigers and bears. And it had on its back 4 wings, like those of a bird. The beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So this third animal is like a leopard, but not exactly like a leopard, because it has wings and different heads, 4 of them. It's given some kind of power. Okay. So we have a lion with wings, a bear with fangs, and a leopard with multiple heads and wings. Okay. After that, as I looked on in the night vision, there was a 4th beast, fearsome, dreadful, and very powerful, with great iron teeth. So now another beast, which we can't even tell what type it is. The others were told it's sort of a lion, sort of a bear, sort of a leopard, with modification. We don't even get the type of beast that it is, but we know that it seems to be more powerful, more fearsome, more dreadful than the previous ones, which are pretty powerful, fearsome, and dreadful, because we're talking about lions, bears, and leopards. Oh my, right? So here we're talking also more than oh my, right? And especially since it comes 4th. And we know from previous things, the 4th one tends to overwhelm the previous 3. So he says, what is this beast, which was dreadful, powerful, fearsome, with great iron teeth, that devoured and crushed and stamped the remains with its feet? So this kind of overwhelms everything else. It was different from all the other beasts which had gone before it, and it had 10 horns. So it was not like anything else, and it has 10 horns. While I was gazing upon these horns, a new little horn sprouted up among them. 3 of the older horns were uprooted to make room for it. There were eyes in this horn like those of a man, and a mouth that spoke arrogantly. So a horn sprouts out of this last one. It takes away the 3 of the horns that were there, and there's an eye on the horn. So again, this is all not actually happening. This is all of the imagination. So Daniel is having like this far out vision. Again, 4 animals. We're not even sure what each one of these things means. Okay, that's going to be part of what has to happen. But if your mind is blowing by what you're hearing here, so is Daniel, right? He's seeing this awesome vision of powerful, strong beasts, and stuff keeps kind of happening to them. They're a little strange. And then this last one is more powerful than all the others. Okay. As I looked on, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat, Hashem. His garment was like white snow, and the hair of his head was like lamb's wool. His throne was tongues of flame. Its wheels were blazing fire. So we see here, well, let's just read a little bit more. A river of fire streamed forth before him. Thousands upon thousands served him. Myriads upon myriads attended him. The court sat and the books were opened. So Daniel, after seeing these 4 powerful images, is now seeing some version of Hashem, right? And Hashem has a full head of white hair, like lamb's wool. His throne is flames. It has wheels, which we've seen if you've ever done any kind of study of the Ma'aseh Merkava, the image of God's throne, which appears in multiple other places in the Tanakh, in Yeshayahu, in Yechezkel, in the Book of Kings, Michayahu, if I'm not mistaken, is the Navi who sees it. There's a lot of times where people have an image of God, and the image of God is some kind of sitting on some kind of throne like a king, but the throne is much more awe-inspiring than a regular king's throne, in that it has beasts and fire and so on. So that's what he's seeing here. It's again overwhelming, right? That's the image that's at play. And again, Daniel is just taking this all in. And in fact, that's what he says next. He says, I looked on. Then, because of the arrogant words that the horn spoke, the beast was killed as I looked on. Its body was destroyed and it was consigned to the flames. So this super powerful beast, right, that has 10 horns, right, and one with an eye, and it's speaking, right, speaking arrogantly. Because it's speaking arrogantly, that puts it at an end. And this big powerful beast is consumed by the flames. So it seems like, yeah, you could be big and powerful, but when you're in relation to Hashem, means nothing. And Hashem could overwhelm that. The dominion of the other beasts was taken away, but an extension of life was given to them for a time and season. So the other beasts, they're sort of around, but sort of not. As I looked on in the night vision, one like a human being came into with clouds of heaven. He reached the Ancient of Days and was presented to him. Dominion, glory, and kingship were given to him. All the peoples and nations of every language must serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship one shall not be destroyed. So one of these something like a human being comes to Hashem, and Hashem says, you're going to last. You're going to be forever. You're going to be whatever. Is that one of the ones we saw before or a new one? If you're confused, good. That's what you're supposed to be. It's a confusing piece. This is a super confusing piece. And well, that's why we need Daniel to help sort it out. Okay, so let's see what he has to say. He says, as for me, Daniel, all that is the vision that we saw, right? So again, to quickly review the vision, just because it's confusing, right? We see 4 animals, right? The 4 animals are lion, bear, leopard, and then strange, right? The lion has wings, then stands up as a human being. The bear has teeth and is told eat. The leopard has wings and 4 heads and goes all over the place. And the 4th one has horns, including one that's sprouting, and with an eye on it, and it seems to be the most awesome and most powerful. That one, because it's arrogant, gets consumed by the fire of Hashem's chair, which we see. And then comes along some other creature, like a human being, that is going to be, you're going to last forever. Okay. So Daniel says, my spirit was disturbed within me, and the vision of my mind alarmed me. I approached one of the attendants and asked him the true meaning of all this. He gave me this interpretation of the matter. So he asked, Daniel is watching this, and he says, I don't know what's going on here. So he says, let me turn to one of the attendants. And attendants here means some kind of ministering angel to Hashem, so one of the servants of Hashem. And he says, what is going on here? And then the angel is going to answer Daniel. It says, these great beasts, 4 in number, means 4 kingdoms will arise out of the earth. Then holy ones of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever. So basically they told him the dream means 4 kingdoms, probably in succession, are going to possess the earth. And then something else is going to come that's going to last forever and ever. Then I wanted to ascertain the true meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from them all, very fearsome, with teeth of iron, claws of bronze, that devoured and crushed and stamped the remains. Hey, what does the 4th one mean? And of the 10 horns on its head, of the new one that sprouted to make room for which 3 fell, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogantly, and which was more conspicuous than its fellows. I looked on as that horn made war with the holy ones and overcame them, until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was rendered in favor of the holy ones of the Most High, for the time had come and the holy ones took possession of the kingdom. This is what he said. So here's what the attendant, the malach, the angel, tells Daniel what that fourth beast is. The fourth beast means there will be a fourth kingdom upon the earth, which will be different from all the kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, tread it down, and crush it. And the 10 horns mean that from that kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and after them another will arise. He will be different from the former ones, and he will bring low 3 kings. He will speak words against the Most High, and will harass the holy ones of the Most High. He will think of changing times and laws, and they will be delivered into his power for a time, times, and half a time. Then the court will sit, and his dominion will be taken away, to be destroyed and abolished for all time. The kingship and dominion and grandeur belonging to all the kingdoms under heaven will be given to the people of the holy ones of the Most High. Their kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey them. Here the account ends. That's the end of what Daniel wrote. I, Daniel, was very alarmed by my thoughts, and my face darkened, and I could not put the matter out of my mind. And that's the end of chapter 7 of the book of Daniel. Right? You could sort of see why the book of Daniel is not studied by so many people, because it's challenging, it's difficult, it's hard to even remember exactly what's happening as it's happening. It's not this normal storyline. It's all this surreal imagery that one has to try and picture in one's mind, because you don't see this kind of stuff everywhere. And then retain it, and then try and make sense of it. And that's incredibly challenging. And hopefully we're up to the challenge. Let's see what we can do today. So again, what do we have? We're stepping back, having seen the whole chapter now in its entirety. And the chapter in its entirety is one of the tougher ones in Tanakh because of what I just said. So backing up and saying the following thing. Part 1 is this, it's Daniel dreaming, which is different than what we saw before, right? Beforehand, who was having the dreams? The king himself, Nebuchadnezzar, which was similar to Paro having dreams. Now it's Daniel's dream. And again, that's why this is in the back half of the book, but we pushed it ahead because chronologically, it's going to be significant. And we need this dream and the understanding of this dream to understand that which we skipped in the book of Daniel. So we're going to come back to that, but that's for another time. So Daniel is the one that's dreaming, and his dream is of these 4 beasts, and beasts by nature are powerful. They're all very powerful and imposing, but it's the 4th one that's super imposing and has more mystery surrounding it and more dynamism around it, in the sense that it's having these horns, and then horns growing out of the horns, and then an eye, and then arrogant speech, and so on, and then even trying to take on Hashem, so to speak, and Hashem putting him down, right? And that's the dream that we have, and that's what needs to be interpreted. And it's interesting because it gets interpreted, right? And what do I mean by that? Like happens in other places in the Tanakh, after we see a dream, we get the interpretation. And we can think of many examples of dreams in which we get interpretations, right? So classic examples, right? This week's parasha, Yosef has dreams. It takes a while, but we figure out what those dreams mean. The butler and the baker have dreams. It takes a while. Well, actually, that we find, Yosef tells them the meaning of the dream right away. It doesn't take a while. Then Paro has dreams. Doesn't take long at all, right? As soon as Paro gets to the right guy, we know what the dreams mean. And there are plenty of other examples of dreams in the Tanakh. I don't want to have to go to too many other places of where there are dreams, but you could think of them. Yaakov's dream. We kind of figure what that dream means. It's not that challenging, and it's the message is there. Hashem kind of tells him right after. So now I'm talking about the ladder, right? The angels going up and down. The book of Daniel, many dreams, right? We see Nebuchadnezzar has dreams, and Daniel gives him the answer, and then we say, oh, okay, so that's what the answer means. So here, within the dream, Daniel, who we know has the power to interpret dreams, because he's interpreted 2 dreams already in the book of Daniel for Nebuchadnezzar. So we know He's a great dream interpreter. And we're going to see one of the chapters that we skipped is he's able to interpret other people's dreams that we didn't even see yet. So Daniel is a master at interpreting dreams. And of course, the connection that we make between Yosef and Daniel, one of the key things that connects them is they are dream interpreters in a foreign king's court. So Daniel is like, think Yosef in that regard. What's interesting is here, it's his dream. And within his dream, he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. So what does he have to do? Even though he's a great dream interpreter, he needs to ask for an interpretation. So what does he do? He finds someone within the dream. Within the dream, he asks, hey, I don't understand what's going on here, which is different than normal. The normal biblical story of interpretation is have a dream, wake up, then go find someone who can interpret the dream. Daniel's different in that regard, in that within the dream itself, he's asking, hey, what does this mean? And he gets an answer. And the answer is 4 kingdoms, right? And one more ferocious than the other, because he says, hey, I don't understand. You're telling me 4 kingdoms, but what's going on with that last one? And he gets an answer on that as well, that kingdom is going to be maybe more oppressive, more powerful, but it's going to end, and however it's going to end. So on some level, we should feel good. We had a dream, and we had an interpretation, and let's go home, right? Like that's how we study, and if we were to compare it to Paro has this dream, right? 7, and we don't know what it means. 7 good years, 7 bad years, makes it happen. Very nice. All said and done, we're happy. Right? But that's not what happens here, right? Because when Daniel gets the dream interpretation, and we hear there's 4 kingdoms, and there's going to be one powerful one, how many of us say, oh, that's it, let's go home. We understand what's happening. None of you, right? Nobody, right? Why? Because it doesn't identify the kingdoms. We don't know who we're talking about here. And part of the proof in the pudding of what I'm saying is that the Chachamim who studied the book of Daniel over the years, the commentaries, I'll just name a few that have comments on this. Rashi, Abarbanel, the Maharal of Prague, there are others, plenty of others, that come up with interpretations of who these kingdoms are. And what's interesting is they come up with different interpretations. And they end up basically, if you look at how they do their interpreting, what they basically do is they say, well, this hasn't come to be yet because we don't have a eternal kingdom in place yet. So who these kingdoms are can't possibly have happened yet, or they're in the middle of happening, right? But we can't say that we're done yet, right? So perhaps the monster is Rome, right? Or perhaps the monster is Christianity, or perhaps the monster is not yet to be determined. There's all sorts of possibilities of what this monster means. And I can tell you that one of the things that's interesting is if there's a dispute between Rashi, Abarbanel, and the Maharal of Prague on something, so Joey Beyda is not coming along and solving it for you, right? In other words, there's lack of clarity on what this is. And before you hear what I think it might be and how we might interpret it, I think it's important to say that the challenge of the book of Daniel is you read it, it's telling you about the future, but it's not telling you when this future is, as opposed to other cases where we say, oh, we know exactly what that is. And when the butler and baker have a dream, we know it's going to take place the next day. And when Yosef has a dream, we know it's happening in his lifetime. When Paro has a dream, we say, you see, there it is. It took place in Yosef's life. Even the earlier dreams, we could say, Nebuchadnezzar knows he's in the dream, so he knows it somehow relates to him. None of that happens here. We don't know who the starting point is. We don't know who the midpoints are. And it's not clear to us who the end point is. And that's true within the book of Daniel, right? Meaning there's no identifier in the book of Daniel saying, this is you. And even though we're reading the book several thousand years later, we're still not sure. And that's even though in between great rabbis, great readers, great understanders of the Tanakh read the book of Daniel, and it was not clear to them who is being referred to by this imagery, by this dream. So it's like, wow, it's got to blow your mind, and it blows minds. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think before we go forward, it's important to just stop and breathe and take that standpoint, because there's a certain desire when you have something that's when you have a prophecy, you want to see the fulfillment of that prophecy. And in most instances, when we see prophecies in the book of Tanakh, in the books of Tanakh, you see those prophecies fulfilled. Here, the challenge is we're not clear, is this a prophecy that is yet to be fulfilled, has been fulfilled? We don't know. It's that challenging. So I have to, like, before I go forward, I have to stop and say that, and it's important to think that process out, which is extremely unusual. You don't usually see that happen in a book of Tanakh. Usually there's a lot more closure. So let's assume, so that I'm going to stop there. I'm going to ask, I don't see any faces. You guys are all on no face cam, which is fine with me, but I'm not getting any feedback. So I'm just curious, are you with me, right? Like, are you seeing what I'm picturing before I go forward and talk about further interpreting? Is the dream as clear as possible? And again, it's not so easy. And is the challenge that I'm putting out there clear? The challenge of it's not clear who it's talking about, before we go forward and try and figure out who it's talking about.
You want to know if we are confused? We are equally confused, but you did explain it.
Okay, I appreciate it. This is, this is one of the hardest pieces in the Tanakh to teach, because it leaves you wanting, it leaves you desiring. Most times when we'll study a book of Tanakh, we'll look at it, we'll say, it could be this way, it could be that way, but we could walk out and say, okay, here's what we're going to say today. This one's a lot harder to do that with, because so many others have done it, and even if they give an answer, I suspect there's a certain vulnerability and humility to their answers, because you don't know, and so that usually, maybe it's wrong. We try and study things so that we walk away knowing and being less confused rather than more confused. So if I've ruined your day, I'm sorry. Anyway, so here's my thought process on this. So the number one thing that I think is that the ambiguity is intentional, right? In other words, that if the Tanakh wanted us to know who it was talking about, it would say so. It for whatever, you have to ask yourself, why would the Tanakh want ambiguity, right? Where the Tanakh usually wants some clarity. It may want you to be able to interpret it in multiple ways, but give you some basis of who to apply it to, and say, okay, Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai, Rashi Ramban, Ibn Ezra. But here it's like, what? So on some level, and then there's one other part that has to be maddening and frustrating, which is, hey, wait a second. If this is telling us about the future, right? And this may be about a future that has yet to unfold. If this is about a future that is yet to unfold, I want to know, right? Like, is there something that we just read that's telling us about our future, right? Like, it's when we read about Paro, right, and the 7 good years and 7 bad years, that's all ancient history, right? And maybe when we read about Nebuchadnezzar and 4 kingdoms, it's ancient history. It happened already. Maybe this didn't happen yet. And if this didn't happen yet, well, then that's quite interesting. And it's very different than, is it foretelling our future? And there's reason to believe that it's foretelling our future, because it's talking about an eternal kingdom, and Hashem's, final answer, so to speak, is this end of days stuff, and if it's end of days stuff, we didn't get to end of days, I don't think, right? So all of that runs through the back of our heads and leaves us with a great degree of unsettling dissatisfaction. That's how I feel. I don't know if I've conveyed that well enough to you. So I on some level, I think that's what it's trying to do, right? In other words, it's trying to convey a message of there's a lot more to come, guys. You're not at the end, and I think that is an important and powerful message to be conveyed in the Tanakh, which is, listen, there is a plan, there is a future.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm going upstairs to get my phone.
Go ahead.
Cool.
I didn't hear you. Okay, but if you want, just unmute and stop me, no problem. But I think there's an intentional lack of clarity, and that there's a vision that can be applied multiple ways on purpose, right? Because if you could read this and say, I know what's going to happen, and as Rashi says, and this is going to wrap up in 200 years. Wow, how do I live my life with that, right? Like, how do I go about doing things if I know that end of days, whatever that means, Mashiach, or however we interpret that, is 200 years from now, or 400 years from now, or 100 years from now, or 3 years from now? Right? Like, what do I do with that? It's cool. You want to know the answer. You want to get there. If I could say, hey, I know when Mashiach is coming, and you say, oh, that's pretty valuable. I really would want to know that. But would you? Right? Not really, because you don't want to live that way. And to a certain degree, because it basically says, what I do doesn't matter. It's all predetermined. It's all set out, and we don't want that. So this is, we want to be able to have as much free will as possible. We want to be able to have as much direction setting in our history as possible. So Daniel has to be careful, and Hashem with Daniel has to be careful in terms of not giving a clarity of, oh, here it is, and here's what's going to happen, and here's how this is going to go, and now just this and that and whatever, and you're in the middle of animal number 2. So once there's an animal 3 and 4, then everything will be good. That would be terrible. So necessarily the vision is vague, because it has to be read for, I don't know how many generations, but for multiple generations. And it has to be saying, hey, there's a plan, there's an order, there's a lot of powers at play, and those powers are real, but those powers ultimately answer to Hashem. And Hashem, even though you may see these incredibly threatening beasts, each one more threatening than the next, including this last one with horns and eyes and beyond, right? What it's saying is, and that one is arrogant, and Hashem deals with it like that, right? And there's something that comes after. So that is, whereas there's a discomfort in not knowing who, what, when, there is a comfort in knowing if, yes, how. This is that, and that is the ultimate message of the vision. And we can try and interpret it and place it into history and then say, here's what it means. And I am going to try and do that next week when we read the next vision, which kind of plays into this. But to be quick, we're going to say that these visions somehow apply to the kingdoms that Daniel lives in, and then what happens thereafter. So I'm going to stop here for today, leave you with a little bit of confusion. If Mashiach comes in between this today and this time next week, so okay, we have it all solved, and we have less to worry about than my Daniel class. But for now, what we'll say is the ambiguity is on purpose, and it has not all come out to play yet. It is not all interpreted. And we're going to try and work with some interpretations next week and try and make a little bit more sense of what Daniel said. So if I've adequately confused you, I hope I'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Take care.